using only your imagination and your understanding of your senses, these faculties of their senses. They had to use these things then to understand certain rhythms of nature through these caves. And obviously, I mean, there's quite a bit more that has to go with the actual initiation. But to stay on point, what I mean by this is they understood, in a large part, from what I understand of their culture, they understood rhythms and cycles of nature a lot better than we do today. The only rhythms and cycles that I see that humanity is aware of today is when certain TV shows are going to come on, when Christmas comes up, what time of the day they get off work, or when they can go have a smoke break, or when happy hour is at the bar. That seems to be the cycles that most people are familiar with nowadays. Unfortunately, none of that has to do with nature. So when we're looking at cycles, natural cycles, even humanity inherently responds to cycles that happen every single millisecond within ourselves. And then we have hourly cycles, we have daily cycles, weekly cycles, monthly cycles, and then yearly cycles. And then it goes even further with that as we understand that this keeps, in a fractal universe, this keeps expanding all the way out through the universe. These cycles keep growing, and if we're talking about roughly a 26,000 year cycle, then to understand how does a daily cycle affect us? You know, how does a monthly cycle affect us as individuals? That, to me, should be a representation of how a 26,000 year cycle would affect us. So it's a lot broader. And I'm not really giving an answer. Like, I apologize for the fact that this might seem that I'm just kind of dodging the question, but really the only thing that I've been able to truly find with 2012 is it's a cycle. It's the end of a calendar. You could have a calendar that maps the menstrual cycles of women on a month-to-month basis. And yes, there are physiological changes that happen. There are psychological changes that happen. There are emotional changes that happen just within that one individual that's experiencing that menstrual change. Well, let's look at that on a grander scale. Taking a huge step back, what in that sense, if you were to expand that on a much larger magnitude, something of the entire solar system, something of our entire galaxy, if you were to expand that, then what kind of changes could happen? And I'm not actually giving an answer. I'm actually prompting other people to look into this side of it. Look into what is the essence or the principle that drives the changes within a menstrual cycle, or that drives within brainwave cycles, or that drives the changes within seasonal cycles, migration cycles, mating cycles, anything like that. Anything that actually has an annual or weekly or monthly or a consistent cycle, because that is vibration in general. Vibration goes through cycles, and if you understand that a vibration isn't like a sine wave from the left side of your computer screen to the right side of your computer screen, it's cyclical in a sense. The form that it actually takes is more three-dimensional, possibly more than that, but it's very geometric. So understanding that these cycles aren't just linear, we need to understand that they are flowing through every single aspect of our being. So in 2012, are changes going to happen? Well, it's very, very, very likely that we're already experiencing much of the changes. Now, look at the population increase. Look at the species extinction increase. The way that our other things in our environment is are being either destroyed or built up. The way things are changing. Are things already changing? Absolutely. More so than ever in our recorded history. You know, maybe before, if it really does come to light in the near future that humanity has been around a lot longer than convention would say, if it really does come to light in the near future that there were races prior to the one that we currently understand right now, if it does come to light about all these changes, then we could be in the midst of this cycle. We could be in the midst of one of the greatest changes of our time. So what those changes are actually going to be, I now actually am kind of, I try to remove myself from actually making any type of prophecy or any type of prediction about it, because the one thing I could say is, how irresponsible would that be with me not truly understanding the way that so many other people don't truly understand the Mayan concept of these cycles. If they don't understand what actually was going through that epoch, that time, the collective mind of that culture at that time, if we don't understand that, then I think it's very dangerous to just come about and say, well, there are new changes that are happening in science, and it correlates with this and it correlates with that, which are all newer understandings, and then just mixing them together into a big hodgepodge and saying that this is possible. It could look like this. I think that's very irresponsible, and that flies in the face of what all of my work kind of gets to in the first place, which is we want to predict it. Why? We want to know what's going to happen in 2012. Why? Because in many ways, people are thinking in the back of their heads, or even subconsciously, they're going inside them, going to be a cataclysmic shift. If it's going to be some type of major change, I want to make sure that I put myself in the best possible position to benefit myself post-2012. Now, if you think about it, that's exactly what the majority of people are interested in when they really investigate 2012. If it's not just random intrigue or curiosity, the ones who really, really look into it because they want to understand it, because they want to position themselves in the post-world according to their belief structures, their dogmas, their insecurities, and their desires right now. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's not adaptability. That in a way, that's stagnating yourself. That's kind of fettering yourself to the way that the world is now. And the way the world is now, people are screaming for change. People are screaming for change right now. Yet people want to stay exactly the same. And their values to be the same post-2012 or post any change that comes along. Because in the heart and in the minds of men nowadays, of most of humanity, people want everything outside of them to change because they feel that they're enslaved. They want their slavery gone, but they don't want to have to change within to do it. They want somebody else or some event such as 2012 to bring about some type of mystical awakening. Just the golden age. We're entering the golden age where just a shift in vibration is going to liberate us, so we don't have to take part in that. Well, that's removing the human aspect of it. That's removing the human altogether. We, in the large part, are learning about our relationship with nature. And if we don't learn about our relationship with nature, then naturally, the result of that is going to be us wanting to remain exactly the same, to remove ourselves from these changes, but just to have all the comforts and conveniences come to us through some mystical awakening of the species. We want the environment to stop being destroyed, but we don't understand how we're destroying our inner environment. We want the tyranny to crumble away. We want the elite, the NWO, whatever we want to choose it to be, whatever this tyranny is. We want that to be destroyed, but we don't want to look at the tyranny that we're imposing upon ourselves. Mm. So in many ways, getting back to the 2012 aspect of all this, do I believe that changes are going to happen? Absolutely. But I also believe that we're already in the midst of the large part of those changes. Mm. And I get into it. You don't just have to look at the numbers of the population increase, because I'm not sure if any of the listeners have actually seen a graph of what the population increase actually looks like. That classic curve where it looked steady for thousands and thousands of years until 1804 when we reached 1 billion. And then from 1804 to 1927, which is 123 years, it doubled. So it started increasing rapidly. And then from 1927 to 2010, it more than tripled. What are we at today? Just under 7 billion. So if you look at that on a graph and you actually look at that visually, that's an incredible change. So to me, are we already in the midst of some of the changes that are coming in 2012? Absolutely. Mm. Just look at the environment. Look at human intervention on this planet. We're destroying things left and right. We're building things left and right. And we don't understand what we're even truly doing on this planet. We don't even understand ourselves, yet we want to build a society to protect us. From what? We don't even understand who the tyrant is. Many of us will read a book, say like, a David Icke book or a Jordan Maxwell book or something along those lines, and we think we'll have a good understanding of what's going on in this world, and then we immediately start fighting. We immediately take up guns. We immediately take up arms, and we try, or picket signs, or protests, or making documentaries, or making, or writing new books and trying to get the word out more. But about what? What is proliferating all this information? What is carrying on and regurgitating all the same information going to do? Really, all that's doing is sharing your own personal feelings with other people. That's sharing your own personal fear with other people, unless it's done correctly. And that's why, with me, I try to be very critical of my own work. And I can say absolutely that my first film, Esoteric Agenda, there could be a lot of changes to that to remove some of the fear factor of that. But that's why, instead of taking it down, I figured I would just try a better job and show a little bit of the progression that I've made since Esoteric Agenda to Kymatica. And now, even from since the time that I released Kymatica, I've made leaps and bounds more changes than I had from Esoteric Agenda to Kymatica. And that, to me, is part of my contribution to this world that is changing in this pre-2012 world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very, I think that's a very substantial way how to actually look at all these things, and all the questions, that we're having, because why are we actually even asking those questions, and why do we so much need something to externally save us, from the things that we're trying to actually prevent, why isn't it not us that we see as the main goal and indicator of the change? Why is it not me who's the one who's asking for something better or worse, whatever the situation is. But Ben, we got about 10 more minutes left to the end of the show. I could talk with you for another 2 hours, Fortunately, that's the schedule. So is there anything else you'd like to, close with before we go?
Did we hit upon some of the questions that other people were asking?
Well, actually, you've been pontificating so much they did not have changed to ask questions yet. But I can, if someone from our audience has any questions for Ben, you can ask now in the last 12 minutes, of the show.
Okay. One thing that I can say is that, in observing my own work and observing especially how things have gone since Kymatica, I can absolutely say that there's quite a bit more research that I have done that I could be kind of touching upon. And in some ways I feel that I give just a different aspect of the same answer for every question that I get. So one thing that I've been working on is actually giving more of like a detailed response to some of these questions, because I tend to always lead it back to the same type of understanding, which is being the observer, understanding the inner environment, and that's a huge aspect of my work. That's actually that's the main thesis of all my work, is being the observer, understanding our own contribution to the world. But on the side of that, there's also quite a bit that I believe we can learn from actual history, actually date events, numbers, things like that. So with some of the questions, I say it would probably be best if in the future we could have another radio interview so we could actually touch base on a couple more like specific things. Because I always like with my initial interview with somebody, if I'm doing an interview with somebody that I've never done an interview with, I try to make it very, very, almost obnoxiously clear that my stance has always been, and probably will always be, being that observer, making sure that you understand your place, your relationship to the information that you read and the information you get from the internet, the information you get from the